Good afternoon. Following to what was said by Mr. Pitilis about my data, I would like to start the next panel pertaining to electronic invoicing, business to government for public procurements. In other words, we're talking about transactions taking place between the suppliers to the public administration and the assigning authorities, the many assigning authorities of the public administration. With us today in the panel, we have Mr. Anagностopoulos, colleague, Professor Mr. Anagностopoulos, who is the Secretary General for Information Systems of Public Sector in the Ministry of Digital Governance. I would like to tell you that he is the person who, 15 years ago, when as a Secretary General of KPO, had initiated the efforts for promoting electronic invoicing. It took us 10 years, but better late than never. And also Mr. Drakos, with more than 20 years of experience in e-invoicing. He's a member of the Board of Directors of the European Association of Providers of E-Invoicing, so he will share with us his experience not only from Greece but also from abroad. Now, a short introduction to the topic before I ask you the questions. Usually, when we're talking about digital transformation of businesses, we are referring to the automation of in transactions, and we tend to forget that the most important problems have to do with the transactions between different businesses, and we're talking about the documents necessary for the transactions between purchasers and suppliers. Moreover, what is very important for the tax authorities is the invoice. Globally, the companies exchange over 550 billion invoices, which is a huge number. In Greece, we have 300 million invoices being exchanged. So if we automate this process, you understand the important benefits that Greece will get. Since 2006, there is actually an application that allows Greek businesses to exchange invoices electronically. During the last 2 years, the government announced important initiatives like MAD-Data and what we are going to talk about today, which is the electronic invoicing utilization in the public procurement, that is, between the suppliers and the public sector. But before we touch upon these topics, I would like to ask a question to Mr. Drakos. You have valuable experience with regard to what's going on in Greece and the utilization of invoicing by the Greek businesses. So could you please tell us your view on where we stand right now and what is our situation compared to the situation in other countries? We represent the most experienced provider of e-invoicing in Greece. We are the oldest provider since we have been operating for the last 20 years, and we have allowed businesses to use invoicing. We started with the retail sector. Since there, we're talking about millions of documents. Imagine a supplier to a supermarket, how many thousands or million invoices they send to the supermarket that need to be typed and registered in the systems. So since then, we have allowed this part to become automated. Gradually, we became active in other sectors like the pharmaceutical sector, where again there is huge volume of invoices. In the energy sector, Hellenic Petroleum, and so on and so forth. All these use e-invoicing solutions. And I'm saying that because first, the big companies start using this type of solutions like invoicing in order to simplify the processes. And as you said, the invoicing is not the tax reporting that we are now performing through my data, which is important. It is one thing announcing the data of the invoice to a state, and another the data that of the invoice that I received from the supplier. This is more difficult to be automated. However, we do have the technologies. We have advanced since 1990. And now we can see that although in the past there were very few companies using invoicing, now we have tens of thousands of companies using this solution. 100,000 small businesses have now become familiar with the invoicing because they have been following the example of the big companies. And we have a penetration of approximately 15%, which means that the paper of the 300 million invoices has been reduced since a large part of these 300 million has been automated. Now, with regard to Greece and abroad, how does it fare? There have been countries like Italy where e-invoicing has been used for more years. In Italy, everything is automated. There is no paper being used. This, of course, we'll expect to be true for not only for the public sector, but also for the business sector. So in Greece, we have thousands of companies, especially big ones, that are familiar with this concept. And there are many providers who are offering these solutions. So things have changed. Okay, now to Mr. Anagnostopoulos, I would like you to talk about the main topic of this panel, that is e-invoicing in public procurement. The General Secretariat that you are heading is responsible for the technical implementation of this project. It works together with the Ministry of Finance and the Independent Authority for Public Revenue. I would like you to tell us where we stand right now with regard to invoicing and B2G, and which are your expectations for this important reform, since we are talking about a reform, basically. Good morning, in my turn. Allow me to make two introductory remarks. The first, as you said, better late than never. And especially right now, this is more true, not only because of the pandemic that has been accelerated, but also because we have made many important steps in this direction. And we need to continue with the steps and make quality steps. And I believe that our country will be a pioneer in the European Union. I'm talking about e-invoicing in the public sector. Now, with regard to the cooperation we have with ADE, the Ministry of Finance, it is very important cooperation, at the same time very creative one. We don't have the responsibility for my data, but we are responsible for the infrastructure, because in order for a project to run like that, important infrastructure is required. You need cloud, you need all the technical solutions that will process the invoices. So thanks to this cooperation, we are in the position to have a very positive result. Now, with regard to invoicing in the public sector and the cooperation we have with the Ministry of Finance, the whole concept, as one would call it, is very simple. We have small and big suppliers, small and big assigning authorities. So the model that exists is the model that includes an intermediate, which is the independent authority, the General Secretary of IT Systems, and which connects the different invoices. Yes, all the invoices come to the General Secretary. And how does this process work? Each supplier follows it separately? No. That's why I said we have the intermediates. Anybody isn't required to do this job on their own. There is a supplier that sends this invoice to us. So it is approved by the supplier, and through this provider, it reaches us. And we are then processing this invoice in order to have it as quickly as possible. And now, which are the objectives? Which are the benefits? If we have an electronic document, invoice, you understand that the state gets it more quickly, and thus has the time to check it and audit it. And this is exactly what the General Secretariat is doing. So we can identify a problem very early on. Secondly, we can monitor the invoice from that point onwards, which means recording the invoice and then incorporating it to the integrated system of fiscal policy in order for the invoice to be paid quicker also. So the benefits are, first of all, automation of process. Automation means transparency. A written invoice may be lost, whereas an electronic invoice cannot be lost, cannot be forged, or cannot be altered. So they are registered in the system, they are controlled, checked, and this is how we know that the invoice is there and we are proceeding to its payment, which means that there is an acceleration of payments of invoices, which is a major benefit because we may have the money and therefore we need to pay the suppliers as quickly as possible. So automation, transparency, facilitation and constant update of where the invoice is in the whole procedure. And of course, we do have all safeguards with regards to control. We have also the registry of assigning authorities, where 2,500 assigning authorities of the public sector have registered in order to receive invoices in that way. And we have also developed a site through which we update the suppliers on these invoicing procedures, and also we update them about the point where the invoice is in the whole process. So the benefits are not only for the public sector, but also for the businesses. Suffice to say that in certain European countries where similar systems have been implemented, the payment time of the suppliers has been reduced by 30-40%. So this by itself is very encouraging. Yes, and health entrepreneurship is encouraged in that way. However, I would like to tell you that we are deeply concerned by the fact that to a percentage of integration of ERP systems in the European Union and in our country, based on a research conducted by the European Statistics Agency, we have 6% and 40% in our country. And I'm talking about the ERP. And of course, we hope that this will change thanks to the acceleration of digitalization process of the state. And we hope that the private sector companies will make the most of these tools. As you said, Greece is a pioneer, especially when it comes to the multitude of messages that the public sector is sending to the supplier with regard to the progress of the invoice. This is something that the Greece has introduced for the very first time, and it is rather good to acknowledge it. You also talked about the big number of the public authorities taking part in procurement processes. I would like to tell you that approximately 190,000 businesses are suppliers to the public sector. So this intervention actually pertains to the 1/3 of the Greek businesses. It is very important, and gradually it will become compulsory. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Dragos.
Being a supplier of those services, you already offer important services of e-invoicing, but also participate in some pilot projects that are currently in progress. Could you please present your experience with regard to this subject and let us demystify what Greek companies have to do? There's not much to do, actually. Most of the things are done by the procurers. So what are you to the advice you'd offer to a Greek society? Yes, let me demystify this part. First of all, I encourage strongly all companies to do so. It's important to understand that the state has full transparency on where the invoice is and where it is found. If it's being rejected or accepted by public administration, is to be settled and is to be paid is very important piece of information for the suppliers who on many occasions do not have it B2B. They don't know when they will be paid. But with the whole situation created and with the overall COVID now, they can have that information. Second, it is well known that the public has harmonized, has transposed the EU law. So the suppliers must send an e-invoice to have it processed. With regard to the difficulty, it's not much that companies usually do. An invoice in electronic form, they've got their data in their ERP. In the ERP, in their system, they have the data of the invoice. A couple of other codes are demanded. The process of uploading, anyway, having to do with the codification of the contracts. So when the invoice reaches some point, it will be automatically be processed by the assigning authority and the code of the assigning authority. So having fully informed the ERP on those 4 fields, which are minimal vis-a-vis the hundreds of elements that an invoice has, then with the assistance of a supplier, a company is able within a couple of days to operate and send e-invoices. The first one, the pilot one, has done with the municipality of Athens and the Greek Petroleum. That was quite encouraging and important because definitely shows the overall procedure is functioning and there can be only benefits drawn, especially with regard to transparency. He also mentioned that the suppliers have to be served, those that have been certified by your authority, but also have been checked to what extent they are compatible. So I suppose you have these lists, both on the side of the Secretary General of IT Systems. So anyone, any Greek company can see who are the IT suppliers who are being accredited. And then, yes, once they have informed their system with all those codes and so forth, they can make a contract and then start sending e-invoices to the public. So there's no technical difficulty for Greek companies. What is important is that this electronic invoice is within the whole European Union, so they will be able to invoice foreign countries as well. And perhaps we can start having B2B with foreign companies. So you consider that it's extremely easy for Greek companies to be integrated because Greek state suppliers are not only big companies, but also SMEs scattered all over Greece. This is very important. Next question to Mr. Anagностopoulos. Certain benefits from all those processes. I would like to ask you, what are your plans for the future vis-à-vis the gradual compulsory character of the e-invoices, and what other things are you designing with regard to the digital transformation of Greek companies? Allow me, first of all, a comment vis-à-vis the future and the compulsory character. First of all, I'm for incentives giving. It's very important when one demonstrates the benefits one will reap from a process is most important as an aspect. Perhaps I am to blame because I didn't underscore beforehand that there's a huge financial benefit, not only for the public administration, but primarily for the suppliers, for the Greek companies, because with this automated process, they save a lot of time and money having to do with the management of invoices. Under normal circumstances, it's not only the loss of hours, of work hours, or the eventual loss of the invoice per se, the need to keep track of the invoice, the stage where it is. It was mentioned beforehand by Mr. Drakos with regard to the concern of the company. Where is that heck of invoice and where in hell are we to get paid? So this is a major... So we must demonstrate those benefits and offer the necessary infrastructure and service in the best possible way. So what are we to do? We must pay heed to have the services rendered, which is effective, efficient, speedy, transparent, and excellent information on both ends, public administration and society. The second, we must see that they are assigning authorities, because it's important. If the assigning authority is huge, to be able to process the invoices and then integrate them in their system for payment, be it the integrated public administration payment system or PUVUE, because there are different instruments and tools that one has at hand. One must have an excellent management of the data feeding. These all are practical issues. They might sound a little bit theoretical, but they are pure technicalities on how one keeps track of an invoice. And also has to do, it's quite important, which are the ministries which are integrated in the platform. We have excellent cooperation with the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry for Education through the main special accounts of the universities, the Municipality of Athens, and so forth. The third part has to do with the submission of the invoices. There are two branches here, the suppliers and the providers and suppliers. Now, the providers must come in contact with the suppliers. They must come in contact for two reasons: to see the whole to see how this process is affected gradually, and this is an easy process, and then how they can discuss with the suppliers how to have this process in a more flexible way. Thus, they will fully understand the benefits. If they fully perceive the benefits as far as time, money, and management is concerned, there will be a very enthusiastic adoption of the new system. Let me also raise two remarks with regard to the broad activities beyond the compulsory character that might be examined in the next year. The first is that we wanted to boost the interoperability with KEDIS, that is the central register of public contracts, so as to have an interoperability, and also with SLDs. These are two tools that will allow for the better information interoperability, so as not to have multi-layering and a better servicing, both of the assigning authorities with regard to the use of those instruments. And for this, to this end, we will also have a project that is the Center of Information Systems that receives and sends the invoices, so as to study both we will have these interventions, how to improve the centers, and also have the appropriate structures and support instruments, both for us or assigning authorities, so as to do our job. There are a lot of things that we might be still able to elaborate. There is also another project of 2 million euros integrated in the RRF with a view to enhancing the role and operations of the Secretary General for the e-invoices. There are also other actions at hand, but because I wanted to focus on that, we will put every effort so as to succeed in this action, because it's not only the cooperation with the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Staikouras, Mr. Skylakakis, who are excellent in their job, and they are very efficient in a very brief time, and we have an excellent cooperation of the team that has been established, and we are very glad that you are in charge of this team, because we really wanted to achieve results very quickly. So as for the very few invoices that we now exchange on a pilot stage, which are only counted in the fingers of two hands, to have a real avalanche with the respective benefits, both for the public administration and the economy. And in complementarity, we mentioned executives from your Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Development, and the Ministry and the authority, the Independent Authority for Public Revenue. All these are now in a pilot stage. This is important because especially if we also have members of the chamber, big companies that have daily transactions with the public, with the state, we really encourage them to participate in those pilot projects, because that's specific particularities might arise and in the transaction they have with the public, so as to take them into consideration. It's what Mr. Drakos mentioned. With the pilot project we have with the municipality of Athens, where certain particularities were taken into consideration. As I understand, the beginning of 2022 will have the gradual compulsory character. You already mentioned some public entities that are starting, and we all hope that this will proceed speedily. You also spoke of the frequently asked questions and a site existing, an excellent information site, which is uploaded in the website of the General Secretariat of IT, where there are 100 questions that are answered. Everyone might pay a visit and take answers in queries that one has. Yes, it's addressed to all involved, both assigning and signing authorities, but also providers and suppliers. We also give the support that you already have. And from the portal and the very well-seasoned procurers of IT services, all that is easily answered. The whole system is ready-made and can be fully exploited. I don't know whether you want to add something, Mr. Drakos, with regard issues of implementation before concluding. No, I just urge companies to move ahead. It's most important that they proceed with all the previous benefits mentioned. And for the public as well, for the assigning authorities. This may be a pebble of e-transformation for the public sector. Having touched upon and having covered a great spectrum of interventions and very successful results in our ministry under Mr. Kerakakis, This is something that we will bear fruit very quickly, and we see them right at hand. It's something that will bring our country ahead and bring it again in tune with the rest of the European Union countries. We will be able to exchange invoices with the European suppliers. So we'll have a network. Probably it's not something which is compulsory in the whole of the European Union, but it's something that moves ahead and will become compulsory, I'm certain. So let us be pioneer in this field. Let me add that we currently have in a pilot phase various projects of e-invoicing for public procurement. So this is an open invitation to the members of the American Hellenic Chamber of Commerce who are contractors, the Greek state. You can find information on the portal with to whom they might address so as to launch a pilot project with them. The gradual compulsory character will start from the beginning of 2022. It's equally important for the members to know so as to get prepared for this important reform. I would urge all companies, public procurers, to visit your site and take this information needed. And with what happens with regard to my data, which is also an innovative project, an international project, along with e-invoicing and compulsory character in public procurement, these are two initiatives that prove the Greek state can also be innovative and thank in the digital transformation of the Greek business ecosystem. This will really help to gradually move to what Italy currently does, that is e-invoicing, which is compulsory at all levels, B2B. Currently, what happens in Greece now is one of the biggest digital transformations taking place at the level of countries at large. So we are at the forefront. Well, happily, we have the opportunity to have such events because what we say and what we are currently presenting must reach the ultimate users. They must get informed. Otherwise, nothing will happen. Yes, furthermore, something that we have not had, there are special webinars organized for chambers and state services. So whoever listens to this conference and would like to have a specialized webinar for their members, it will be our joy, a great pleasure to organize it. Thank you for this extremely interesting discussion. I hope that we'll see you again soon so as to show quantitative benefits with regard both to cost curtailing. By the way, in a study we effected, we saw that there would be 100 million euros saved by the Greek companies when this is fully introduced, and also see the reduction of the period of the payment days. This is most important. Thank you, and we proceed with the next.